Hi there. First of all, a very warm welcome from the whole team here at Platform Manager. Today's session is all about the Qlik metadata that we extract from your Qlik apps, your mashups, reload tasks, and extensions. And during the next 20 minutes, we will talk about relations, analysis reports, global search, and our latest development, a Qlik Sense app based on your metadata. So we hope this session gives you some new insights about using the metadata to enhance your ecosystem. If you have questions during the session, please use the chat function that is part of the webinar functionality. So let's start. To make sure we're all on the same page, I'd like to start with a brief introduction of how PlatformManager works. So what we tell our customers is that you should see PlatformManager as a layer on top of your BI solution. So when you start using our solution and it's installed on premise, the first thing you do is you get all of your items into our solution. So that means you would import your Qlik apps, you would import your mashups, your extensions, and your reload tasks. And from that moment on, PlatformManager is a single point of truth, and you initiate everything you do with Qlik through PlatformManager. So a developer will perform a checkout, will make his changes still in Qlik Sense, and will perform a check-in. And during the check-in, we synchronize the app, the change app to the associated Qlik Sense or Qlik View server. But also we extract the metadata from that app. So if the developer has included a new sheet with 4 new visuals, he has used 2 extensions and created a new extension, a new connection to, or used a new connection to your data sources, all that information is going to be extracted by us and will be stored in our metadata repository. That also enables us to allow you to view the differences. So all of the changes I just mentioned will be visualized in the difference report that when you run that on this specific new version. The next step will be that you publish the new app to the next environment, which can be any type of environment. In our setup, it's an acceptance environment. And during the process of accepting the change, you can work your way through the checklist where you can have different tasks that need to be approved. And only when all of the tasks are approved, you can move it to the next environment, which is production, where your business users are actually using your application. So this is in just a minute the overview of our solution. What we will be talking about today is the power of the metadata. And as I said before, the metadata is extracted when you perform a check-in, but also when you import the initial version of an app, task, extension, or mashup. So let's look into that first. So let me change by bringing up the application. This is the portal from where you have access to the various modules, of course. We're now focusing on development, which is where we will do most of our analysis. So let's assume that we're working in Europe and that we have a project which is called the Cars project, which contains several Qlik Sense items and also some reload tasks. Now, what we'll be dealing with today is, in general, the same for Qlik View and Qlik Sense. So keep that in mind. I'll be showing most Qlik Sense examples, but it applies for Qlik View as well. So if we take this as an example, the car production app, we have imported this. We've used this in many demos already. So there are 22 versions available at the moment. But one of the things that I would like to show you first is the relations that we have from this Qlik Sense application to other items. And to visualize that, I can simply click this icon, which explains, which shows basically the relations that this item has to other artifacts within the Qlik community, within the Qlik ecospace. So what you can see is that this item has relations with 4 different extensions: the Qlik Date Picker, the Share button, the Vislib Activity Gauge, and the bar chart. It also has an associated reload task which is running, and there is a mashup associated, which means that the mashup is basically using visualizations from this car production QVF file. So that's part of the metadata that is about the relations. Now this works both ways, by the way, because we are also managing the extensions. You could also click on one of these extensions, which will navigate directly to the extension part of the solution. And here you have the same overview, but then the other way around. So you can click on any of the extensions to visualize the apps that are using that extension. So in this case, we see that there are 6 apps in total using the share button extension from Qlik. So if you would get a new version of that extension, you might want to check 1 or 2 of the apps and test them to make sure that it's still functioning as expected. So that is what we have in terms of the relations. Now, another thing that is interesting is the fact that you can see what data sources are being used by the app. Let me just go back to the app that we've just selected. So in this case, we can see that there are 2 QED files that are being used, customer flights and car customers. We can see that there's an Excel sheet called car sales, and we are basically creating a car sales QED from this app ourselves. That's already interesting information, of course. What we can also do now is we can visualize that using the data lineage feature that we have. This is all based on the metadata that we have extracted. So this data lineage picture brings you, gives you an overview of not only the files that are used by our subject, car production QVF, but also the context of the entire application. Of course, you can turn off specific levels, so you can focus on just one level if you just wanted to see the picture of the car production application. But in this case, I have all the levels turned on. And that means that I can now see that the customer flights QED that we're using is basically coming from a Qlik View application, which you can see here. And the other QED file is coming from another Qlik Sense application. So this also shows you the integration between Qlik View and Qlik Sense in terms of our data lineage. What we see with many customers that they have still Qlik View in place to generate the QED files that are being consumed by Qlik Sense. And then it's useful that you have an overview in the lineage that combines these 2 different modules where you can see how your QED files are being used throughout your whole implementation of Qlik. What we can do from here is also we can click on any of these boxes to bring up the lineage for that specific app. So if I wanted to see the client arrivals data lineage, I'll just click on it, navigate through the subject again, and then I can see what files are being basically used by this QVW to reload. So that's interesting as well. You can do the same, by the way, with the text files that we have here as well. So for instance, if I wanted to see who is using this car supplier text file, I can simply click that. In this case, it's just used by one Qlik View application, but it could be used by more, of course. So that's how you can navigate through this lineage file. For instance, this car customer text files is being used by 3 different applications, basically. So you can also load all kinds of generic files in PlatformManager. I'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. But this is what I wanted to show you in terms of the lineage that we have. So what we can also do with the metadata is we can basically show you every component being part of your application. So looking into the 22 different versions that we have, what I can do is I can simply click any version if you like, and I can run a structure and definition report. And that basically brings up different components of your app from that moment. So this is the latest version. So this is just from let's say from last week. So I could look into the script. I could see the script, what it looks like, and so on and so forth. I could look at the sheets, the fields, the variables, the used connections, the external relations, extensions, and so on and so forth. And the fact that some of these are blue means that those are the components that are being used. So the app does not contain any KPIs, not contain filter panes, line charts, and so on and so forth. The nice thing is that this can be done as well apologies for that, from a historical item. So if I wanted to see this overview from, let's say, version 1 of this item, of this Qlik Sense application, I can do that. So, and that means that I'm now looking at a version of the script from the first app that we had, basically. And this could look a little bit different. I'm not sure. I didn't compare it, but yeah, what I see from now is that this has 3 QVD files, while the one that we have currently only has 2 QVD files and 1 Excel sheet. So I know that from the top of my mind. But of course, this is very powerful because it enables you to have automated documentation available, which you don't need to spend any time in doing it because it's automatically generated, right? And what comes out of an extension out of this is that you could also compare these two versions. You can compare any version of your apps to actually view the differences. So you don't have to compare them yourself. We can do that for you. Let me just show you how that works. So I'm just going to go back to the main screen. And if I wanted to compare between version 1 and version 22, for instance, let's just do that. I just select those two versions and run a difference analysis. Okay. So, and that will show the differences between these two versions. I'm not sure what it's going to bring up, but let's just have a look. So the script, we see some change in the script. For instance, well, we can see that there are different fields here compared to what we see on the right side. We can see that there's a new, completely new load statement here. There's a load statement that has been removed, and there's a store statement that has been changed. It's instead of storing it in cars in stock, it's now stored in car sales. So, and you can just work your way through this difference analysis any way you like. So, if you want to compare the sheets, you can see the difference in sheets. There's a bar chart removed. I can click that and it will show me the properties of the bar chart. There are new charts here, and I can click on those as well to bring up the specifics for that chart. And then, of course, you will see the dimensions, the measures, the type of chart, and so on and so forth. So that is valuable information, especially if you are responsible for testing any change, because you never know what you need to test, right? You have a change request which functionally describes what has been changed, but you don't know what has actually changed inside the application. And also you never know if the developer only implemented a change request, because he might as well have looked at some other things and corrected some other parts in the application that were not part of the change request, because he thinks that it's better, because he fixes a bug by doing that, and so on and so forth. So then it's always nice if you have a technical overview of the changes that is reliable and that works quite well. Now, what we also have, which is not part of the metadata basically, is we have a lifecycle report. And that means that you can follow everything that happened to an app. So in this case, the initial version was created, I think, probably about somewhere last year. No, 2019 actually. And you can follow it all the way through till where we are today. So you can see that there were, it was edited, it was promoted, the state was changed. So that means that the step in the workflow has been approved. You can see that as well, from in progress to approved. The remark there was it was successfully tested, and then it could be moved to production. So everything that happened to this app is stored in our metadata repository. And you don't only have this report to see what has happened, you can also create your own Qlik Sense apps based on our metadata repository to give you some more insights on this. Actually, we do have an example of the metadata app that we can share with you. So we'll do that in a couple of minutes as well. But this is valuable information also for auditors if they need to know when a specific app was moved to production or when a specific change was moved to production. This is something you can give to him as assistance. Now, what some of you may not know is that the fact that we can also manage any file type. So we're not limited to just QlikView and Qlik Sense. You can basically store any file type in PlatformManager. As you can see here, we have Excel sheets, text files, SQL scripts, Word documents, PDF file even. Basically, there's no limitation, right? You could even put executables in. I would recommend that, but it is possible, and you can do version control of them. So you can perform a checkout and check in. But yeah, and we also have the ability to provide some additional information to you about that. So if I just give it as an example, for instance, the customer text file, what we can do as well is we could compare these two. And we're not using our own compare, we're using external compare tools to do this. So as long as there is an external compare tool that compares these two different files, you could implement that in your PlatformManager environment, and that enables you to do comparisons like this. So that also means you could use this to compare Excel sheets. Excel has an own compare utility. You could implement that in PlatformManager, and then you can compare different versions of an Excel file. Of course, this works the same if you wanted to see the differences in the SQL script here. If I want to compare version 3 with version 1, I can do that as well with the external compare utility. So again, this is completely configurable for you if you want to use a different module for a different extension. That can be configured quite easily. So that's something that you might keep in mind when you use PlatformManager. So the next thing I'd like to show you is the global search. So this is basically an ability that we provide to you to work your way through the metadata that we have available for you. So you can easily access the module by clicking this hyperlink. And then when you're in the global search filter option screen, you can define which modules you want to include in your search. Now, this really depends. If you're looking for something specifically for Qlik, you will probably disable all the other modules. But if you are looking for specific table column combinations, for instance, to see where they are being used, then you probably want to check all of the boxes, all of the modules to search across all of them. So for now, I'm going to look for specific Qlik stuff. So I'm going to exclude the SAP. And for instance, I could look for a QVD file. So why is that logical? Let's assume that I know that we have a specific QVD file. I'm not sure where it's being used. So I cannot I cannot use the lineage, because then I would need to have an application as entry point, but I don't know which application is using the QVD file. So in this case, we can see that there are some QlikView files using this current QVD file, and I can basically click on any of the files to bring up the details. So you can see here that it's being used 4 times and it's being stored, or it's being used 3 times and being stored once. And the good thing is that it's all stored and used in the same location. So this could be something to check if the location where the file is stored is the same as the location where you're reading it from, because otherwise you might be using an old QVD file. So this is an example that you could use, for instance, to analyze your ecosystem, your metadata. Another example could be that you wanted to look for a specific path or a specific server. Let's assume that you may want to replace an existing QlikSense server with a new one, or maybe with a cloud server even. Then you could look which apps are still using the old QlikSense server. So for now, there are no matches. Not sure why that is. I did not include QlikSense here. That's my mistake. Apologies for that. So I'm doing this again. And now you'll see that there are several apps that are still using references to that server, probably for their data connections. So yeah, again, this is it's a technical overview, of course, but it's very powerful because of the way that you can search through the metadata. So I think that's very nice as well. And also what you can do is you can look for variables. For instance, if I wanted to look for a date format, then you can do that as well. And you might want to use this to see if the date format is identical across all of your applications, right? So in this case, if I click any of these, I can see that there may be different date formats used, but so you can check that as well. And then you can correct it, of course, if that's the case. So we see a different date format here than what we see there. So yeah, that can be deliberately, but if it's a mistake, then we may want to fix that. So it's a technical function, very valuable though. So I think you could benefit a lot from using this. And then finally, what I'd like to show you is that apart from the global search that we have, allowing you to search across the metadata, you can also use the app that we have available for you. Now, the way that this works is when you want to have apps available in this menu, you could just select a folder from Platform Manager in the configuration part of the solution. And all of the apps that are part of that folder will appear on this menu. So I could access any of these apps basically. Of course, you need to have the access rights to use those apps. So we also see the Metadata app here. So I'm going to open that right now. And this app contains various sheets for you to do some analysis on your metadata. Of course, you can extend the app. You can do with it whatever you like. You need to configure this to make sure that it runs on your own data, of course. So that's described in this instructions sheet, which is the first sheet of the app. And then just going through the app, this is some sort of a dashboard that allows you to navigate through the elements that you're looking into. So if I wanted to see the checklist rejected items, I would just click again and it will navigate to the promotion items checklist, which is one of the sheets that we'll enter in a couple of minutes. So this gives you an overview of the number of items that you have, the number of instances, groups, items, failures, users, user groups, etc. So this is partly based on the metadata and partly based on the data that is inside Platform Manager about users, user groups, privileges, and so on and so forth. So this first view is based on the audit trail that we have. So it resembles sort of the Lifecycle Report that we just saw, but this gives you the ability to, of course, use the selection options that you have inside Qlik. So you could check, you could select a specific function, like check in or check out or promote or what have you. And you could select a specific user or a specific app or a date or a month or select no with success if you want to see the failures and so on and so forth. So that gives you the ability to get some more insights in the audit trail table. This is the same information presented in a different way, of course. And again, you have the Qlik Sense features to focus on a specific entry. Let's say I want to focus on the edit. I want to see how much time it takes and what apps are edited the most and so on and so forth. And of course, the amount of time that it takes is also depending on the size of the apps, if you store them with data or without data. So that's all important information that you need to take into account. License information can be found in Platform Manager as well. Then some information about users and user groups can also be found in Platform Manager. This could be interesting. Apparently there are 12 users without a role. That's not the way that you should actually configure this. So we advise you always to define the privileges on role based, on group based instead of individual users. So that's something you might need to look into. So in that case, this could be some sort of a health check as well. Then we have information about workspaces. Again, user details. So what is the private workspace of a user? How's that been defined? Maybe you want to have that according to your company policies as well. So that's something you could easily check here. Then some information about connections. So these are the connections inside PlatformManager. So it's not about your data connections, but this is about the connections that we have defined in your PlatformManager environment. So connecting to your Qlik Sense, Qlik View servers, to your remote file system environment, and so on and so forth. Then we have information about development items, of course. So you could select all the items that are checked out, for instance, to see which items are currently under development. So if I click that one, it will show me the different items that are currently being developed. So that's useful. And of course, you can do all types of analysis here on all the different statuses that we have available. And you could also select, of course, the type of application that you're interested in. Then we have some more information about development usage. Items per group, instances, number of instances per item. We see here a client arrival application in Qlik View that has 46 instances. So that might be up for archiving. So to reduce the amount of space that we have for this specific application. Then there are some extraction issues apparently that we need to look into. So it's always good that you know that these things appear, because that will, if you have extraction issues and you don't solve them, that might prevent you from being able to run difference analysis, for instance. And then some information about your development groups and the levels of the groups, the different folders that come together within those groups. So that could be interesting. A total of 91 groups that you have. Then some information about the promotion environment. In this case, we have acceptance and production. You could have, of course, more environments than the two that we currently have here. So then also you could, of course, dive into a specific environment and to see what is going on there. Rejected items, so that's in the workflow. If an item is published to acceptance and the test fails, for instance, then it's nice to know why they've been rejected. So you could see, you could focus on those items and investigate why they are basically rejected. Okay, so this pretty much completes what I wanted to show you today. I hope it was an interesting session for you. If you have some questions, you can still type them in the chat box, and I will answer them to the best of my knowledge. I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance. I hope it was interesting, and looking forward to meet you again during one of the next sessions. Bye-bye.